Welcome everyone, my name is Alex Hormozi, I'm CEO of Acquisition.com. We own a portfolio of companies that help founders who are at $3 to $10 million minimum in revenue get to $30 million plus, scale and exit in 3 to 5 years. That is what we do. For everyone who's not in that category, my goal is to just help you for free and provide more value than anything you can buy online. And my transparent goal is to make everyone wealthy because that's what I believe that. And hopefully, if you went from 0 to 3 million or 1 million to 3 million using the stuff that we provide for free, then I already know that you'll be able to execute and then I will be able to help you far more and show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. So anyways, that is why I'm doing this stuff for free if you're curious. And so let's dive in and talk about how to provide high value products. So it's taking your existing services and making them more valuable by changing the offer that we're providing them from a fulfillment standpoint. So we already talked about, making sure we're picking the right market, charging what it's worth, how to deconstruct value, how to understand all of the obstacles that are going to get in the way of the prospect so that we can create a high value solution. Now we're getting into how to actually do this in the real world. Okay. So what are we actually going to give them? What are we literally going to give them in exchange for their money? All right. So this is building your offer part 2. All right. So the offer might not be actually making money because what you're providing is not high margin or valuable. All right. This is a key point. It might not be high margin. So you might be maybe solving the problem, but you're not making any money. All right, so I'm going to show you how to break this apart and make it work for you. All right, so there's a few pieces to this. One is understanding from a theoretical standpoint the sales to fulfillment continuum that exists. The next is the delivery vehicles. This is the how of how you're going to deliver the solution to them. And then what I like to do is a process called trimming and stacking for max profit and value. All right, so we're going to look at all the solutions we could possibly do. And then we're going to trim the ones that we don't think are going to be valuable. And we're going to stack the ones that we do think are going to be valuable and high margin. And that is what we're going to ultimately provide. All right. So let's start with the sales and fulfillment continuum. So right now, you've got this fun little graphic that I drew here of easy to sell and hard to fulfill. Right. So if something's easy to sell, it tends to be hard to fulfill. If something's hard to sell, it tends to be easy to fulfill. Right. And so I'll give you an example of that. So if I said, I'm doing done for you services, like done for you in general tends to be easy to sell, harder to fulfill because now you have to do everything, right? On the flip side, if I said, hey, I'm going to sell you a course, that in general tends to be harder to sell, especially at higher prices. You have to be far better at persuasion and provide, stacking value and communicating and marketing, all that kind of stuff. So it's harder to sell, but it's easy to fulfill. You just give someone a login, right? And so this is understanding this continuum is really key, especially as you're getting started. Now, for me, I tend to focus far more on this side of the equation when I'm working with a business, as in it's something easy to sell, hard to fulfill, and then we slowly work our way this way to the other side. Now, sometimes you can build an entire business just around this, and especially if you're a very good operator and you're good at building infrastructure, building teams, building culture, and you've figured out a new way to do fulfillment so that something's easy to sell and easy to fulfill, and that's really what we want to get to. But in general, this is typically how services work, and you can see this on the continuum of done for you services, as in like people pay you money and you do something for them. Done with you is more like like a trainer, a personal trainer, for example, is a done with you. If you went to the gym or if you had a coach who's got a program and you're following steps. Mentorship is a common example of done with you, an advisor, right? And then do it yourself is you get access to a book, you get access to a course, just like you're doing right now. And this is something that is harder to sell and easy to fulfill, right? So that is kind of how that continuum works. So the way that I like to think about this, though, for me personally, is I like to focus on the things that are hard to fulfill first, that are easy to sell. And I like to liken this to the Tesla pyramid, okay? So if you think about this, I love Tesla's entire process around this, is that they first started with $250,000 cars, the Tesla Roadster, right? And they price positioned themselves as doing this thing, right? And it was harder for them to make those cars. It was a very smaller audience that wanted them, but those people all had lots of money and would happily do it because they were first adopters, right? Now, over time, from there, they moved down the pyramid and started selling $100,000 cars. Now, that was accessible to far more people. And then at the bottom, you've got $30,000 cars, which is accessible to just about everybody, right? In the US at least. And so for me, if I'm working with a business, especially if you're starting out right now, you're under 3 million, looking at this and thinking, okay, I'm okay serving fewer people at higher prices so that I can get my chops, learn the skills, price anchor myself in a way so that when you do say, hey, I'm opening up this thing that's a little bit easier for me to fulfill, you'll have the credibility, the perceived likelihood of achievement from your prospects. So they're like, well, this person was charging this much, so now this is a deal. Right? And it all exists within the context that we create. This is the frame of mind. This is the frame of reference. And so I prefer to build businesses from the top down rather than the bottom up. I see this as a very common mistake. This is my opinion of guys starting out. As they try and, I can't even tell you the amount of times they're like, well, I don't want to sell something that's not scalable. And I'm like, bro, you don't even have clients. You don't even worry about scale. You don't even have money. So let's go get you money. Let's go sell high ticket, more custom stuff first. Let's get cash flow. Let's get easier things to sell, harder to fulfill. Let's get things going and then learn more about the business and figure out what pieces we can trim and stack that we can provide pretty, like almost the same amount of value for less operational drag, something that's easier to fulfill for us and lower the price, but we've been positioned in such a way that that makes it easier to sell. And so the idea is that when you come down this pyramid, it would normally be harder to sell some of these things, but because we have gone through this process, it is easier to sell and actually makes the process more fluid, okay? And so I just said this is a consolidated point. Selling the more expensive thing automatically price anchors and value anchors for your lesser expensive thing with more scale. It also creates a simple reason why for your communication. So it's like we couldn't keep up with all the demand for our custom one-on-one thing, and so we made something that we could, that more people could participate in. So if you're looking at what I'm doing, and the reason that acquisition.com is built as a pyramid as well is for that same concept, is that I'm really just serving, the guys who are at 3 to 10 million and trying to scale and exit. I have made the rest of my entire pyramid. I don't really want to sell courses. I don't want to sell, coaching programs. I just want everyone to make money. And so my goal here is I'm just making everything easy to fulfill. For me, obviously, besides the front end work of putting all this stuff together for you, is that just so that you can be successful. And obviously, if you make money, using this stuff, right, then when I could work with you specifically, then you already know that my style and my frameworks are effective, and it makes the process much easier. All right. So the conclusion is, and this is one of the sayings that I have, and I will repeat it here, is that you need to create flow first. Then you monetize flow, and then you add friction, which is making it harder to sell and easier to fulfill. So the friction in the process is I need to make this scalable, which is how do I make it easier for me to fulfill? Now, in general, most times when you do things that are easier for you, it's less value to the prospect. Not always, but in general. And that's why it takes a lot of time and thinking to create things that are very high value and easy to fulfill, right? And so my rule of thumb when someone is starting out is create flow first, get the yeses first, even if it's hard to fulfill, make money. And then when you look at all the things you did, I'll bet you there are some things in that process that you said you were going to fulfill on that the person didn't actually get a lot of value from. And they may have been really hard for you to fulfill. So you can start cutting those pieces out, adding things that you didn't have. And then you're basically iterating on your offer until you finally have the stack of things that are very valuable that you can provide to them. Okay. And so we always start here and then move that way. Okay. That's kind of my thought process, especially if you're starting out. So one of the other things I like about this is that because when you have harder to fulfill things, they tend to be more expensive. And so you don't need to sell as many of them. So it makes it easier for you to get started without needing to accommodate scale, which is a whole problem in and of itself. All right. So get some money, then use the money to build your business. Don't solve for problems that don't exist yet, which is I need to be scalable. It's like you don't need to be scalable because you don't even have clients yet. All right. So number one, sales to fulfillment continuum, understanding that is one of the first things in terms of where we're going to start on this pyramid, because when we're about to get into the hows, that is the context under which we're going to be thinking through the hows. Okay. So there's two pieces to the delivery vehicle. So it's listing a problem and all the ways you can solve that problem, right? Then we have use the cheat codes to make it easier to think through, which is basically the delivery cube. This is how I think through things, okay? So I'm using the same example we had earlier. So we had buying healthy food is hard, confusing, expensive, time consuming, and I won't like it, right? So if I wanted to provide a one-on-one solution, what would I offer? I might offer, hey, I'm going to take you to the grocery store myself, and we're going to go shopping together this first time so that you understand where to look, how to do it, and how we can do it in a quick and inconvenient way. So that would be a really easy way for them to think, well, I mean, if I went with him, it wouldn't be confusing. It wouldn't be hard. He would show me how to do it for less. He would show me how to do it faster. And if I was with him and they liked me during the sales process, they probably would say I would kind of enjoy it. I like the company, right? So in one fell swoop, I solve all those problems one-on-one, right? Now, these are other ways I would maybe solve that same problem one-on-one. So I have in-person grocery shopping where I take the clients and teach them how to shop. Now I could do this one-to-many, but if I just wanted to one-on-one, I could do that. I could do a personalized grocery list. So I might teach them how to make the list. That'd be one-on-one, a single consultation that I would show them how to make their specific list, right? I could do a full-service shopping where I buy their food for them. All right, this is a done-for-you solution that's one-on-one, right? I'm just going to buy their food for them and deliver to them. Another one would be in-person orientation. So this is now in-person, but just not at the store, where I teach them what to get, right? I could have tech support while shopping. So I could say, hey, just shoot me a text when you're shopping. And if you have anything, if you get stuck, let me know. Just shoot me a picture of the can of soup that you're thinking about buying, and I'll make sure that it's according to your plan. It could be a phone call while grocery shopping, which is we'll plan it out, and I'll get on the phone with you for 30 minutes while you're shopping to make sure that you buy everything the right way. And it could be a FaceTime call, whatever, right? And this way I'd provide, direction and support throughout that process. All right. Now, if I wanted to provide the same concept in small group, all right, remember, this is just examples of solving one problem, which is they don't like grocery shopping or they don't know how to do it. All right. So if I was doing a small group solution, I would take a bunch of people shopping, right? I could do also a personalized grocery list for a group of people. So I could kind of walk them through a framework or a process of creating their own list. I could buy their food for them again, but I would do this for everyone in a group fashion, not just one-on-one. Or I could do a in-person orientation, not at the store, right? So that's how I might be doing for a small group, right? Now, if I wanted to provide a one-to-many solution, right? I might do a live grocery store tour that would be virtual, or I might live stream into a group for all my new customers and let them ask questions live. I would go grocery shopping, not them, right? I could do one of them and do a recorded grocery store tour where I might shop once, record it, and then give them that as a reference point going forward, right? I might create a do-it-yourself grocery calculator where I create a shareable tool that shows them how to just put in their meal plan and then they get their groceries spit out based on their goal and their calorie intake. I could create predetermined lists where each customer, I might do this ahead of time, right? Where I have 30 different lists based on their body weight and goals, and I say, well, you're a 1B, here you go, and then I give them the 1B plan. I could have a grocery store buddy system where, remember, this is one-to-many. I could do this infinitely scalable. I would just pair customers, right? And then they still get a lot of the emotional benefits. I could pair old customers with new customers. I could pair 2 sets of new customers. I could also set up times where they all meet at the store without me and they go. I could also do pre-made Instacart grocery carts for delivery where I actually pre-make it. I share the cart with them and they click it on their phone. It's immediately delivered to them. All right. So these are different ways of solving the same problem, right? One-to-one, small group, one-to-many, right? And so this is the delivery cube. This is how I think through any type of product or service that I'm going to think of. So if right now, I like to think of this as a creative process. So when I've taught this before in the past, I've had different feedback. One of them is, don't even worry about this. Just think about everything you could possibly do for someone, all right? I tend to like having prompts. So I do it this way. If this is confusing for you, you can stop and just do it on your own the way I just said, which is just list out every possible way you could massively think of. All right, we're going to trim and stack in a second. You're not going to do all of them. But you can think through just going, how many ways can I solve this problem? This is how I do it, though. So the first dynamic that I just walked you through is one-on-one, small group, and one-to-many. All right, I like to think about it in that fashion. All right, the next way I like to think about it from a framework standpoint is, how could I solve this problem in a do-it-yourself format? How could I solve this problem in a done-with-you format? How could I solve this problem in a done-for-you format? Now, you probably noticed that some of the solutions I had were do-it-yourself, done-with-you, and done-for-you at each of these varying levels. So this is a cube, right? All these components interact with each other, but I can't show a cube on the screen. So it's 6 boxes, all right? The next is the level of support. Do they have tech support? Do they have chat support? Do they have email support? Do they have a live phone call support? Do they have expert support? Do they have Zoom support? These are all different things that I can do at varying levels based on the convenience for me and the customer and the value it's going to provide. The next is, what level of consumption am I going to have? Am I going to have them consume this information via video? Is it going to be audio so they can just listen to it in the car? Is it going to be a written format, or is it going to be live, or is it going to be recorded? Right? These are all dynamics of how I'm going to have them consume. So if you're thinking through that, you're like, what could I do live? What could I do recorded? What could I do via video? What could I do via PDF? Right? Those are all different ways of consuming the information. The next is speed and convenience, right? Am I going to provide this level of service at all hours, 7 days a week? Am I going to do this, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday? That's the when. And then there's the speed component, which is, how quickly am I going to get back to somebody? Am I going to get back to them in 5 minutes? Am I going to get back to them in an hour? I'll tell you, at one point for Gym Launch, we had a 3-minute promise, which was, if someone had a question, our chat team was available, I think it was 12 hours a day. I think it was 9 to 9, that they would respond within 3 minutes or less. Now, what we found out was that after doing this, research, right, it was more valuable for our clients to have an expert that was less available than, ideally, an expert would be available 12 hours a day, and maybe I should solve for that. That's, food for thought for me. We actually ended up transitioning to a more valuable, very, very high level person being available every day, but just not all day. And so that was the solution that we ended up having. But it's understanding these variables, because that's just my market. It may be different for yours, right? And then finally, the last dynamic that I like to think through with this is the 10x to 1/10 test, all right? And so I'll walk you through that. So right now, I want you to think about the price point that you're planning on charging for this, for whatever your thing is, your services, your product, whatever. And that's X, right? That's what you're currently at. Now, if I said, right now, we're going to 10x your price, what else would you want to fulfill to make it 10 times more valuable? All right, so 10x the price in your mind, and think, what else would I normally give or provide in order to justify that price, right? And so that will get you thinking in a different dynamic of how you can provide and solve problems, because maybe you should 10x your price and provide those things, because there are many people who just would prefer just more value, right? On the flip side, and this is a slightly different test, which is the 1/10 test, which is, if I was forced to provide more value than I currently am, but I could only charge a tenth of what I'm currently charging, what would I do? And so what this does is it gets you thinking in building assets, building tools, building resources, and things that you would only have to build one time exclusively that are far more valuable than what you're currently doing. So think about, like, if I provide more value than I currently am and I had to charge 1/10 the price, how would I structure that delivery? And so if you go through the 10x to 1/10 test, the 10x will stretch you up ways, and then the 1/10 test will stretch you from an efficiency standpoint. So you get both aspects of your mind stretched. All right. And so this is the delivery cube. This is what I like to think through when I'm creating products and solutions, which is really what we're doing, services to fulfill on promises. Okay. And so now what I do is I list out all the possible solutions to all possible problems. All right, and then just consider using the delivery cube if that's useful for you. If that sounds like too much to you, then just list out all the ideas that you have. All right, and so that is the how. And the final step in this process is the trimming and stacking for maximum profit and value. Okay, so we now should have this huge list of stuff, right, of delivery systems that we're going to provide, and we're going to rate them in terms of value and cost to you, okay? And so the way I think about this is maximizing profit and value. So there are going to be some solutions that if you had to rate based on the value equation, which I already shared with you earlier, is that this might be low value, high cost. Okay, well, we're not going to do that, right? And this one might be medium value, low cost. But even if it's not high cost, it's low cost, but it's not a lot of value, then it just becomes a distraction, right? It's not something that, like, I want every single piece of my delivery to be hard hitting. I want them to be like, wow, that's wonderful. I'm delighted. I'm going to tell my friends. Like, that's what I want to think through when I'm creating my stack of solutions, right? And so I only pick things that are high value. And now, once I have the high value things, you're going to see things that are high value and high cost and high value and low cost. I'm going to keep both of them for now. So we're going to keep everything that is basically high value, independent of cost, but we're going to note the cost for one final thing in a second, okay? So you list them all out, cut out anything that's low value, note the cost, and you go to step 5, which is figuring out the final value stack, right? And so the idea here is every single thing we have is going to solve all the problems that they have, because there are going to be some solutions that solve multiple problems, right? So like I said earlier, if I were doing a live grocery tour, right, with a group of people, well, that's automatically going to solve the hard, it's confusing, all of these other things. And I might only have one left, which is it's not sustainable, unless I did it every week, in which case that's fine, right? But the point is that it might not be sustainable for them in the long term. So then I create a mini thing on the back end to show how they can do it on their own in their own time, et cetera, right? And so the idea is you have this matrix of problems in the prospect's mind, and we're just checking off every single one of the boxes so they have no reason to A, not buy, and B, not be successful, all right? And so the final result here is high value items, and some that are high cost and some are low cost. So the last step that I look at is I typically will not have more than 1 to 2 high cost delivery items for a set of solutions. So I'll try and solve as many of the solutions as I can in low to medium cost scenarios, and save the 1 to 2 high cost things to be the heaviest hitting, right? And so do I think that a live tour would be really valuable? Yes. Could I solve it in another way that would provide almost the same value? So maybe I would do that buddy system thing that probably solves the same problem, and it does, but I'm not involved in it. I just have to pair the people. That's easier for me. If I provided 2 one-on-one consultations during that period of time to help them troubleshoot, that would probably be perceived as valuable, increase the likelihood of success, and it's also a little bit more convenient for me, right? And so those would be the types of things that I would be including. If I had a one-on-one coach, right, that I would assign to them, for example, to hold them accountable, whether it's a relationship coach, whether it's a money coach, whether it's a weight loss coach, it doesn't really matter. The point is that we're holding them accountable to the plan, and then we're checking with them on a daily or 2 times or 3 times a week basis to make sure they're hitting their goals. So that's something that's super high value. It is high cost to me because I have to scale people to do that. But do I think that the value outweighs the cost? And in that example, I probably would, because I think the number one issue that most people have is actually executing. So I would really focus on holding them accountable so they could be successful, right? And so that is how I think through each of the service delivery items when we're creating this final high value, high profit offer stack that we're going to be recombining together to make the core offer of what we're delivering to our prospects. Okay, and so again, when we're defining value, we're thinking about this in terms of the value equation. Is this financially valuable with them? Would they think, wow, this is really cool? Would they think that they'd be likely to succeed when we're thinking about through those value things, that stack? Does it make them feel like they can do it without much without effort and sacrifice, right? And then do we think that we can help them accomplish the goal and see the result they want in less time, right? And so those are the 4 variables, and we're thinking about each of those solutions within the context of those 4, all right? And so from a high cost, low cost standpoint, because I know I'm going to get questions about this. For me, especially in service, something has to be at 80% or higher gross margins. So gross margin is, if I charge $100 for something, it has to cost me $20 or less to do the fulfillment, right? And you're like, wow, 80% or more? Yes, because we have other costs running the business. So if you hope to have a 30% margin, then it means, 20% is going to cost of goods. What, X percent is going to go to cost of acquisition. You're going to market, you're going to sell, you have commissions, you have marketing teams, you have advertising. All that stuff is going to take up the next piece, right? You're going to have infrastructure pieces, you're going to have software, you're going to have, admin, you're going to have finance, you're going to have billing, HR. And the thing is, especially if you're starting out, you want to make sure you should be the most profitable in the beginning, because it's only going to go down with time because you're going to add more infrastructure, right? Now, obviously some businesses, this is a generalization. Some businesses become more profitable with time. It depends on, if you have a software business, et cetera. I'm not getting into that. But in general, for most people starting out, you want to make sure that you have high margins because you're going to be adding people as you scale, right? And so, like I said, if the cost of fill is $200, you need to be able to sell it for $1,000 to keep 80% gross margins. All right. And remember, the gross margin is the direct cost of fulfilling what you sell, not the indirect cost. Okay. So if I sold a service of some kind, the person who actually fulfills that service is going to be the direct cost. The indirect cost might be rent, it might be software, it might be processing fees, it might be those are all indirect costs. The direct cost is if I added 100 people to my thing, how many more people would I need to hire? That is my direct cost. My indirect cost is the other things that would accompany that. All right. And so that's where your gross margin, you want to have at least 80% when it's service. All right. Now, if it's physical products, it's a little bit different because you can sell more volume, et cetera. But for service, which many people are listening to this you want to be at 80% or higher for gross margins. Okay. So high value, low cost is the goal. And we want to stack as many of those solutions together as we possibly can. This is what it might look like, right? We have, item 1, 2, and this one might be high value, high cost. The other ones are high value, low cost. Problem 2 might be we have one high value, high cost, and the rest are high value, low cost, etc. Right? And so the examples on this: low cost might be recordings, tools, swipe files, PDF, videos, group sessions. High cost might be one-on-one, personally reviewing a sales call, personally reviewing a therapy call, personally reviewing 10 deals for your real estate coaching, going to your house and cleaning your pantry, take you on a tour of a grocery store to go shopping. Those are all high cost things. High value though, right? If I were a real estate coach and I said, hey, I'm going to review your 10 deals and make sure that you pull the trigger on one of them with my sign off, then that would be high cost for me time wise, but I'm going to probably perceive that as very high value because my number one concern is I'm going to make a mistake, right? If I'm a buyer. So this would be something that I'd probably include as a high cost, high value, right? Now I might have all my recordings, tool swipe files, my calculators to see, to show, but there's just something to be said about having that little extra piece of trust that I'm not making a mistake. I'm reversing risk, increasing the perceived likelihood of success. All right. And so this is the second half of creating your high value offer. We already had our problems. We listed them out. We found the solutions. We understand that we want to provide just a handful of high value clients, lots of value first, and then price position that, learn more about the prospects, figure out how we can deliver that in a more scalable way, but start at the top and then work our way down, right? We know the delivery vehicles, the how, and then we trim and stack for max value and profit, okay? And so that includes step 5. Don't worry, there's all the sexy stuff is about to come in the next one, where we're going to cover bonuses, guarantees, scarcity, urgency, and then naming. But right now, if you're having offer and you're getting started, walk through this process, look at the delivery cube, and think about different and creative ways of solving the problems. And you can find more about this stuff on acquisition.com. I'll be posting blog posts in time. You'll also have this course is offers training. It's the advanced training. It's absolutely free at acquisition.com. You don't need to opt in. It's just yours. So enjoy, and I'll see you in the next video.